Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. So in today's episode, I'm going to do something I have not done in a really long time, and I haven't done it at all, really, for this book, which is I'm going to be reading an excerpt, short excerpt from the book, talking about what is illustrated in that excerpt, which this happens to be about overfunctioning and underfunctioning, that dynamic in relationships, how it impacts us, and giving you some tips on how to stop overfunctioning if that is you. So before we get into it, if you happen to be new to my channel, please introduce yourself in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the bell icon so that you get notified every time I roll out something new, which is every Tuesday and every Thursday, all about up-leveling the quality of your life and your relationships. And I want to say thank you for all the questions and the comments. This YouTube channel is hopping. Everybody is very active here. I love to highlight your questions or your comments. And this is from Treva Whitney Moore, 682. What crap are you leaving in 2022? That is the video that this comment was under. I just purchased your book, Boundary Boss, on audio. You will be in my ear as I travel to spend time with family over the holidays. Great timing, right? Yes, I will agree, right. As soon as you began, if not you, who, if not now, when, I knew that I was brought here for a greater purpose beyond myself. But first, I need to know my boundaries. Thank you, Terri. Why, thank you, Treva White-Moyer. I super appreciate you leaving that comment here. It makes me know that what I'm doing, what I'm putting down, you're picking up, which I super duper appreciate. All right. Why don't we get into today's episode, shall we? All right, I'm talking about my client, Dina. One night when she was on her way out for her night shift, Ed said, "Hey, babe, can you make me scrambled eggs before you go?" She sighed. "Actually, I'm tired and looking at a long night," she said. "Can you make the eggs?" She didn't plan to say this, but the words materialized as if by magic. Ed, however, did not find Dina's request magical. "Oh, sure, I'll make it myself," he said, clearly irritated. If Dina wasn't so annoyed, she might have laughed at what happened next. Ed, who had lived in this house the exact same number of years as Dina, started opening and shutting cabinets looking for a pan. How does he not know where the pans are, she thought. While Dina watched, he opened the refrigerator door, scanning the shelves. "Do you use butter?" he asked. "Would you also use oil?" The door was open so long it started beeping. "What's that?" he said, looking alarmed. "What kind of cheese would you put in the eggs, cheddar?" Good Lord. Looking at Ed feign such helplessness in his own kitchen, Dina walked over, grabbed the butter from his hands, and said, "Never mind, I'll do it." There's got to be a better way, she thought. When we finally take a long look at our patterns in relationships, we start to see how it's never just one pan of scrambled eggs, that one time we inconvenienced ourselves, that one relationship. This long overdue interpersonal revision will affect every aspect of how you relate to others, including how you set boundaries, the balance of giving and taking, and where you're unconsciously driven by a need to manage those around you. When you're an HFC, you are all about the relationships in your life. Healthy relationships are built on mutuality, relatively equal effort in giving and taking. But if you're an HFC, you are likely giving more than you are taking. So, in this excerpt, I'm talking about a therapy client who had this dynamic in her relationship where she was sort of doing all the things. And it wasn't always that way. So let's get into the concept of overfunctioning, because I know from what you guys have told me over the many years that many of you suffer from doing too much. So what is it, right? Think about it. Have you ever, in your friendships or in your romantic relationship, are you regularly doing more than your share of the work, and the other people are regularly doing less than theirs, right? So are you overfunctioning, and are they underfunctioning? Or did it start out more balanced and then developed into the over and underfunctioning dynamic? I really want you to think about that, because that's very common, especially with HFCs, that we can sort of turn a regular functioning person into an underfunctioner. This type of behavior, right, is a form of codependency, and it is exhausting. Anybody raise their hand if they're tired as hell? The first step to changing it, of course, which is like everything, is recognizing it, is just seeing what you're doing. So I'm going to just give you a couple of points so that you can start to think in your mind of what are overfunctioning behaviors. Like, what does that actually look like in practice? Well, being overly focused or actively solving another person's problem, right? Frequently giving unsolicited advice. But it's almost like their problem becomes your problem. Doing things that are a part of someone else's responsibility. I see this in my therapy practice with parents who are afraid to let their kids fail. So the kid didn't do the report. The parent comes in and is complaining to me that they were up until 2 a.m. basically finishing the report on the Roman Empire or whatever it was that the kid was supposed to do, which of course that's overfunctioning and not the parent's responsibility, and teaching the child something that we don't really want to teach, which is that it's okay if you don't do what you're supposed to do. Someone else will do it for you, that you don't have to suffer the consequences for your actions or your inactions in that case. Another indication of overfunctioning behavior is feeling like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. Like if you don't get it done, if it's not yours to do, no one will. And I felt this way for a very long time. My immediate response to things was that I'll do it, that I'll get it done. A result of overfunctioning behaviors is feeling exhausted from doing too much, feeling resentful or underappreciated. So some of these are behaviors and some of these are the results, right? Like what happens from doing these overfunctioning behaviors for too long. So when you're an overfunctioner, the thought of stopping overfunctioning for loved ones, for your partner, really can create anxiety. Part of the thing is that we think no one else can do it as well. If we don't do it, no one will, or they won't do it in a timely fashion. And all of those things may be true, but that still doesn't mean we have to be responsible for everything. And it's not good. It's not just not good for you. It's not good for your relationships. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions in the guide for this episode. I'll give you some of these questions so that you can start to really look at, because listen, if you identify as an overfunctioner, just know that we all do it and we all do it differently, right? We all do it sort of our own way. So I want you to think about your life right now. Where are you volunteering to or just doing more than you need to be doing? Really, really think about that, right? Where are you the point person for all the things in your life? Where are you doing things for other people that they can and should be doing for themselves? Because that's the whole thing. Like, we don't realize how there's an infantilization process that happens. It's hard. For me, it was kind of a bit of a bitter pill to swallow in the beginning of my own recovery from being an HFC, was that I really had taught people how to treat me. I kid, but it's true that I could, in my 20s, I could take a perfectly functional boyfriend and turn him into an underfunctioner in 2 weeks or less. Like, I'm not kidding. The only way I felt comfortable was when I felt like I was in control. I wouldn't have thought it was control then. If you had said, wow, that's controlling, I would have been like, no, I'm not doing it like that. That's control. I just want to help. I just want to be of service. I just want to add value. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you're an HFC, a lot of this behavior is compulsive and unconscious and reactive. So we're not choosing it per se, right? We're really just doing it. I was on a radio show the other day. It was a psychiatrist radio show on Sirius Radio. And someone called in and said, I have 4 daughters and I have 7 grandchildren. And I watch all the grandchildren 5 days a week. And I'm 68. And I said I was only going to do it until the kids got into school. So when they turned 5, right, then they'd go to school and then that was that. But that was 7 years ago. It didn't sound to me like she had any intention of stopping, and my advice was, well, why do you feel like you have to do it? She's exhausted, feels underappreciated, so she insisted on doing it in the beginning, which is what she shared, and then now doesn't feel great about it because it's imbalanced. And what ends up happening is that when our motives, right, we want to be perceived a certain way, or we want to ensure that we're loved, or whatever, when our motives are kind of messed up, we end up being resentful. If you can do it with a equanimity and a full open heart, and you choose to do it mindfully, not reactively, that's a different story. And everyone has different limits that they have in respect to when is enough when it comes to giving yourself away, because this lady wanted to retire. And like all I could see and what she was sharing on that show was all of the self-abandonment. What about your dreams and your plans and what you wanted to do at this phase and age of your life? Like from what she was sharing, she wasn't doing those things because she feels obligated to watch her 7 grandkids from 7 years old to 2 months old. Clearly, there's a part of her that thinks that's okay or she wouldn't be doing it. But the thing is, the chickens come home to roost, meaning we end up being resentful. It feels like people are taking advantage of us, even if we insisted that they do in the beginning. Make sense? And I don't feel like you can do it forever. So I'm going to ask you, and I give this to you in the guide, which you can get at terricole.com/guide. Make a list including all the tasks, right, emotional and physical, that you're currently taking responsibility for, right? And then look to see, where can you delegate? Can you initiate a conversation? Step back from overfunctioning, right? Creating more equity in your relationships, right? With less resentment, and how much happier we are in our relationships when we're not feeling like someone is taking advantage of us. And I have to say, before I get into the things that you can do to stop, so I'm going to give you a bunch of tips. I want to go back to the story of Dina and Ed. This was a long-term relationship, my client, in the book. It isn't like it started out that way, right? It started out different. So I'm going to read a small excerpt about how it started out, and you can see how things changed in their relationship and what happens when things change. When Dina, my client married to the reluctant egg chef, began to take stock of the underlying relational dynamics, it became clear to her that she was an overfunctioner and Ed, her husband, was an underfunctioner. Her focus in recent years had been on her own finite energy levels. As she aged, she did not have the limitless bandwidth she once had. When we got married, she said, it felt like it was us against the world. Ed was not always this apathetic. He used to bound downstairs in the morning making me my coffee, and he would bring it to me in bed. He hasn't done that in, I don't know, at least a couple of decades. When I asked her if she could pinpoint a shift, she said, well, I guess it happened around the time we had our oldest child. For financial reasons, I had to pick up more shifts starting when the baby was 6 months old. It's all a blur, really, but I was working on some kind of autopilot because it was just easier for me to handle everything. And then I asked her, if you could guess, what do you think changed for Ed? Dina thought for a moment. You know, I remember him becoming needier around this time. As I was doing it all, I'd not only left myself out of the equation, but him too. So this was the beginning of the shift in their relationship. And then there can be complications. In this couple's history, he also then had some health challenges. So that added to his own sense of not being able to, so he went out on disability, he was having heart issues, and so there was even more reasons why he was feeling like he couldn't add value. And she also was a bit of a perfectionist. So he told the truth to her and said, hey, you know, in the beginning, part of what changed for him is that even when he did do things, it wasn't good enough, or it wasn't the way she wanted it to be done. And so he stopped offering. So it's not to pinpoint blame on any person. This is for you to be aware of the over and under functioning dynamic that you might be experiencing in your own relationship. And it doesn't just have to be a romantic relationship. It could be friendships. It could be sibling relationships where this happens. So it's important for you to see, where are you sort of creating your own suffering? Because that's what I was doing, and I just didn't know that's what it was. I felt like I had to do those things, not realizing that I had choices. So let's talk about some strategies in the last few minutes we have of this episode. Talk about some strategies to stop. Number 1, be mindful about what you're taking on that someone else isn't necessarily asking you to. Right? Really think about. So the questions I gave you, which they're going to be in the guide, right? Use those to get clarity about where are you serving yourself up on a silver platter, as I say, in a way that will eventually make you feel resentful. Number 2, up your communication skills. Because the key to more equitable distribution of work and emotional labor and effort is effective communication. So you need to be willing to share your wants, your needs, your preferences, and have the language to do so. And it's important because, again, we can blame our people, but the truth is, if we are not saying it, nobody can read your mind, and they shouldn't have to, you know? Number 3, share and ask for help. So just make a list of all the things that you do at home, right? In your partnership, in your relationships, and at work. And then share your list if appropriate. Share it with other people. And if there's things that other people can and should be doing. And you can ask for help. If you have teenagers, ask them to help. Even smaller kids, ask them to help, because everyone should be a part of the solution when it comes to running the ship of family life. I'm not saying the kids are going to have as much responsibility as the grown-ups, of course not, but they should have some. We want everyone in a family system to have a little bit of skin in the game. And I feel like I was listening to Leanne Morgan, I think is her name. She's a comedian, Southern comedian. I think she's from Tennessee. And she was saying, it's Christmas time, and I'm not saying everything falls on me, but everything falls on me. And she's like, literally, if I didn't do it all, do all the shopping, do all the wrapping, do all the cooking, do all the cleaning, put up the tree, do all the decorating, we would not have Christmas. And she's saying it as a part of a bit, right, that she's talking about. But she meant it. And I wonder how many of you can identify with that. Like, are you the one who is creating all of this without the help of other people, whether it's holidays or anything else in your family system? Some of this stuff is appropriate, makes more sense for the adults to do, but a lot of it, I think when you get your list together, you guys, you're going to see that there is so much room for delegation, and it's going to create anxiety for you if you're an HFC. It just is. And this is where we need to take a look. Number 4 of the actions you can take is you need to take a look at the underlying reasons why you feel compelled to overfunction, right? The more we understand how we are the way we are, how we got here, the more we understand there's a reason that we're doing what we're doing, the easier it is to change our behavior. Because for a lot of us, this was just modeled behavior in our families of origin. I mean, certainly it was for me. I mean, it was very clear-cut roles. I mean, my father mowed the lawn. That's it. And I'm not kidding. And even then, when we got old enough to sit on a tractor mower, 10, then we did it. And my mother did everything else. And that meant creating Christmas for 4 daughters every single year, baking, cooking, making sure we looked cute, buying outfits, like being up until whatever time, getting all the presents together, all of that stuff. And I guess I didn't consciously know that when I was a little kid, obviously. But as it became obvious, the older we got, the more we saw that my mother did all the things for all the people. And so it took years in therapy to try to untangle that belief that to be a good woman, good mother, good partner, that I needed to do all the things for all the people. And I mean, years of therapy. So anyway, I'm happy to say I'm kind of on the other side of that. And being an HFC, you guys, being an overfunctioner, this is something that the only thing we can hope is that we can get into recovery for it. And every once in a while, you'll still have a slip. I still do, because this is just part of the nature of this affliction of being an HFC. So I would love to know if what I talked about in this episode resonated with you. Did you like me sharing from the book? Was that fun? Did you like it? Did you not? What other things do you want me to do episodes of the Terri Cole Show about? Because I would love to do that. So what are the things that I want you to do? What are the actions you can take to be less of an overfunctioner? First of all, if you don't have the book, go get it. HFCbook.com. It's great. You'll love it. Tons of exercises. It's all about you, really not about me. You're going to love it. Join the membership if you want me to walk you through how to get into recovery for being an HFC. We do that in my membership, terricole.com/TCM for Terri Cole membership. And for this episode, we also have a guide, terricole.com/guide. All of these links will be in the show notes. I want to say thank you for being with me today. And as always, take care of you.